At the number 10 spot, we have Naoya Zenin. Naoya would happen to be a user of projection sorcery, which is sorcery that would allow him to travel at immense speeds. And this would be due to the very fact that he can move within 24 frames in 1 second. Meaning he can make 24 movements while 1 second passes. Unfortunately, this does have its own limitations. When moving, Naoya can no longer change his own trajectory or direction. This means that his moves are very predictable. In addition to this setback, he also has to follow the laws of physics. If Naoya does end up changing his trajectory, or if he breaks the laws of physics, his entire body will freeze, and this will allow his opponent to attack him. Naoya's ability is like a double-edged sword. In order to allow you to further understand just how powerful Naoya is, Naoya can make 24 movements in 1 second. So let's say someone throws 1 punch in 1 second. Naoya would be able to throw 24 punches in 1 second, therefore making him 24 times faster than a person that can throw 1 punch in 1 second. Naoya would be moving so fast that you wouldn't even be able to see him at all. If his speed isn't dangerous enough, he even has more abilities that he can use from using projection sorcery. When touching any of his opponents, he is able to trap them inside of a frame, and this allows him to attack them while lowering their defense completely, which allows him to have the opportunity to fatally wound his opponents with an attack. He would even have enough strength to kick people through stone pillars, and speed that would allow him to catch up with your flying body. Naoya would even be able to reach the speed of sound and become even faster. Offensively, he can attack you non-stop. He can even catch his opponents off guard by touching him with the palm of his hand. This ability allows him to force you to move at 24 frames per second. And if you do not move at 24 frames per second, this will freeze your body, and this will allow Naoya an opportunity to kill you. After holding on to grudges as a human, Naoya would become a cursed spirit, and this would only make him stronger. With that being said, Naoya's speed would become even more devastating, allowing the naked eye to never even see him. He would even evolve as a cursed spirit, and this would allow him to ultimately do the unthinkable. While using projection sorcery, he would even freeze the air itself by putting it into a frame and then punching it, causing it to explode. As a cursed spirit, Naoya would even be able to travel at a speed of Mach 3. With his domain expansion, Time Cell Moon Palace makes it so that anyone he touches inside of his domain is forced to move exactly like him, and if they do not copy what Naoya does, they end up freezing for 1 second. If you end up moving after being frozen, you will be attacked and killed at a cellular level. Number 9. Toji Zeni. If there was one word I could use to describe Toji, it would be superhuman. Oddly enough, Toji would not have a single trace of cursed energy in his body. By no longer having cursed energy, Toji's 5 senses would reach a new plateau. His body would even develop a resistance to curses. One of Toji's weapons, known as the Split Soul Katana, would allow him to cut through anything's soul. He would even possess eyes that can observe the souls of inorganic matter. With that being said, Toji would be able to see the souls of substances such as rocks, glass, and metal, and there's so much more, but I think you get the idea. Toji also has a wide array of weapons at his disposal. Not only does he have a gun in his possession, but he also uses the inverted spear of heaven. In this sense, he can prepare for just about anything. When being eaten by the Rainbow Dragon Cursed Spirit, which is easily Geto's most durable cursed spirit, Toji is able to cut through it because he uses the Split Soul Katana. If Toji ever faces a problem, he can use any weapon that he needs in order to solve that problem. On top of having enhanced senses, Toji has superior physical strength and speed. Humans, let alone shamans, can hardly keep up with him. Toji would have enough speed that he would be able to run on water casually. Megumi would compare Toji's speed to Sukuna's, and he would even consider that Toji would be faster. Megumi would even state that seeing Toji is near impossible. Toji would also be able to move in and out of domain expansions freely, meaning that it is impossible to trap Toji in a domain. This will be due to the fact that he has no cursed energy. And another perk that comes from not having cursed energy while fighting domain users allows someone like Toji or Maki to be immune to guaranteed hits that come from using domains. Even without cursed energy, they can truly decimate their opponents. Number 8. Hajime Kashimo. Kashimo is arguably in his own league. He would even have enough speed to destroy Panda in one hit, only to be quoted to be insanely fast by Panda, which helps give you an idea of what Kashimo's speed is like. Panda couldn't even react to him. However, Kashimo's greatest perk would be his cursed energy itself. The properties of his energy allows his cursed energy to be electric. Just by making contact with Kashimo, you would be electrocuted, therefore making him impossible to defend against. If you were to try to block one of his punches, you would still be damaged by the electricity coursing through each punch. And that's not all. Kashimo can separate cursed energy charges, and so when he attacks an opponent, he can create a positive charge. And in doing so, he can create a negative charge within himself, which would allow electricity to rend through the air. And with this attack, it can never miss. This attack has the properties of a guaranteed hit from a domain. However, he can use this without having to cast a domain. With that being said, there is a way to fight back against Kashimo's impossible to defend against attacks. If you some way somehow have a high enough cursed energy output, you can ignore the electricity that surges through each and every one of Kashimo's attacks. Kashimo is easily one of the last people you would ever want to fight. Once he charges up enough energy, he can literally instantaneously send electricity right through your body and easily tear off your arm with a ranged attack. And of course, he's using electricity, so I think it's safe to leave you to think about how fast that is. Because he is rending lightning through the air, it can travel at 270,000 miles per hour. Meaning that you're gonna practically be killed in an instant. His fighting genius is something to take into consideration. By leaving his staff in the ground, he can use this weapon to store his cursed energy. And he can retrieve the cursed energy in his staff just in case he runs out of any energy in his own body. And while retrieving cursed energy through his staff, he can turn it into an attack to trick and significantly damage his opponents. If any of Kashimo's opponents were to sense that he no longer had cursed energy, he could immediately position himself in front of his staff, retrieve cursed energy, and also attack opponents who got too careless when it came to attacking him, thinking they had an opening to attack him because he ran out of cursed energy. However, that would no longer be the case. Even when facing off against an immortal, Kashimo would not even use his own cursed technique. He would hold back and completely stand a chance with only cursed energy manipulation and the traits of his cursed energy alone. Number 7. Mahito. Without a doubt, Mahito is easily the most terrifying person to fight on this list. Whenever he takes significant damage, he can easily just reinforce the shape of his soul. This act would be completely different from healing altogether, meaning that any physical attacks that you do to Mahito will have no effect on him, leaving the only way for you to actually be able to kill Mahito is by destroying his soul, which is easier said than done. How do you attack someone's soul? It's pretty hard to imagine, with some of our conclusions being the use of the soul split katana and possibly being able to perceive the soul altogether. What really makes Mahito so dangerous is that by simply touching you, he can kill you. And he does this by manipulating your soul. Jujutsu sorcerers can't even protect their souls themselves. However, subconsciously, they can protect their souls with cursed energy. Normally, by touching someone once, Mahito can kill them. However, if they subconsciously protect their soul, Mahito will have to touch them maybe 2 or 3 times rather than killing them in one hit. Just by simply being touched, you can die. Mahito can even change the shape of his own soul, and this is where his combat prowess begins to truly shine. Mahito can do just about anything in a fight, and his options are completely endless. If Mahito can think it, he can do it. By simply thinking of his arms taking a form and shape to kill, he will begin to embody it and his arms will become blades. And this happens simply because of his own instincts. While fighting, Mahito has the ability to adapt to any situation in front of him. After attacking Yuji from a distance by turning his arm into a drill and stretching it, Yuji would catch this same drill and Mahito would instinctively turn his arm into spikes to prevent Yuji from holding onto his arm anymore. Mahito's ability allows him to react and adapt to any situation in an instant. As long as Mahito can think it, he can absolutely do it. When opponents are close to him, he can turn his body into spikes and impale them. If he wants to get away from anyone he's fighting, he can either turn his legs into that of a deer or grow wings and fly away from his opponents. He can turn his arm into a sword and grow an extra eye to see anyone attacking at any of his blind spots. If he wants to dodge an attack, he can simply just make himself smaller than the attack itself, allowing him to run away from a fight with utter ease. Mahito can stretch his arm and even make it grow in size. Depending on where he's fighting, he can even turn into a fish if he really has to. And this is all the potential he has just by changing the shape of his own soul. When he manipulates the souls of other living beings, he can turn humans into living weapons. He can make swords and even turn people into his own personal minions. He can even turn people into live ammunition and fire them as a projectile. These same projectiles can be shot within a wall and be used as a trap. Speaking of walls, Mahito can create walls of flesh to prevent you from moving in a specific direction. And we're really only just getting started on Mahito's abilities. When he uses soul multiplicity, Mahito is able to merge multiple souls at one time. After merging these souls, he then causes their bodies to reject each other. In doing so, the energy of the soul itself will overload and cause a giant mass of flesh to be launched as an attack. Mahito can even make a clone of himself fight alongside him. This clone would have its own limitations because it would only be able to change the shape of its own soul, but it will not be able to manipulate the souls of any other living beings around it. Even while getting his head lopped off, he can use this same body part to clone himself and also grow limbs on the body that was attacked and have it fight for him while he creates an army of transfigured humans while you're distracted fighting his clone. What do you do in this situation? I really couldn't tell you, but any one of these monsters that Mahito creates has enough force to punch Toto through a building casually. And after understanding the true essence of his soul, Mahito can take a new form entirely. With this form, Mahito would obtain blade arms and be able to cut opponents at a distance. He would also be able to take full advantage of his body by using his tail as a weapon and his own hair. In this form, Mahito would also be more durable than Chozo after using his own blood to harden his body for defense. Finally, Mahito's secret weapon would be his domain expansion. When using this, he would practically kill anyone he fights. It's a guaranteed win if he uses his domain. While in Mahito's domain, he can manipulate your soul without even touching you. If you're in his domain, you are already dead. If he really wants to, he can hold his domain up for 0.2 seconds, which means that he can kill you in just 0.2 seconds. If you see this guy, it's best to just look the other way. Number 6, Geto. Geto would fight with the ability of curse manipulation. This would allow him to actually use curses for his own bidding, and every single curse he collects would fight for him like a Pokemon. He has 4,461 curses in his possession, which means he has 4,461 chances of beating you in a fight. The possibilities of Geto defeating you are quite literally endless, and this is due to the fact that each and every one of these curses has their own unique abilities and even a domain expansion that they can use to kill you. He can even use multiple cursed spirits at once if he really needs to, and he can use cursed spirits as shields. With just one of his curses, it traps you in an innate domain, and you can only leave this domain if you answer the curse's question. And after answering this question, you are immediately attacked. With an ability like this can really show you how a curse can trick even the strongest or smartest of individuals and truly put their backs against the wall. With his smallpox deity alone, Geto can do more than enough damage to a good amount of sorcerers. The smallpox deity would put you in a domain, and when you're inside of its domain, it will trap you in a coffin, then immediately bury you underneath a gravestone. And after 3 seconds of being buried, you'll be infected with a disease and die. The only way to fight back being killed by a disease in 3 seconds is to escape from the coffin that is being buried by a boulder underground. How do you escape that? I really couldn't tell you. Honestly, this is really just cheap. How do you fight this back? The worst part is, the smallpox deity can even spam this tactic. Just keep in mind, only one of his cursed spirits is doing this much damage, and he has 4,461 that are just as, if not even more powerful. If you somehow figure out a way to defeat this deity, it only gets worse if you try to fight Geto. Like I said earlier, they may have figured out a way to defeat the smallpox deity or even the cursed spirit that puts you in an innate domain. However, Geto can make it so that you never end up figuring out how to beat any of his cursed spirits. He does not have to let you fight his spirits one-on-one. He can literally have you fight multiple cursed spirits at once, and we've already seen how much damage just one spirit alone can do. Geto can literally make it so that you never ever even get the chance to actually fight him. If you figure out how to beat one cursed spirit, he can just simply summon another or have you fight multiple spirits at one time. I don't know how anyone can win because he literally doesn't even have to try, and if he really wants to, he can combine all 4,461 of his cursed spirits into one attack, with it being Uzumaki. This attack would destroy anything and everything in its path, which is really no surprise in the slightest. Geto's domain can even take away simple domain techniques, leaving you with no defense against his domain at all. With this domain being gravity-based, he can take you and slam you into the ground, breaking every single bone in your body. Number 5. Megumi Fushiguro. Megumi would easily be one of the most versatile fighters in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, with even Ryomen Sukuna taking a liking to his 10 Shadows curse technique. With this technique, Megumi can summon animals by making shadow puppets. He can summon dogs that will bite, scratch, and tear away at any enemies he faces. He can even use these dogs strategically to create a signal, and he can track down people and objects by having his dogs follow their scent. When using Nue, he can create a bird out of his hand signs and have it carry him for an easy means of traversal, allowing Megumi to reach heights he normally wouldn't as a human being. Nue is also a great method to attack opponents because it will bash into them continuously and even strike them with its body that has a current of electricity running through it. This would make Nue impossible to defend against. As great as this summon is for attacking, it can also be used for defense, by using its own body as a shield. Megumi can also use his hand signs to summon the Great Serpent, which can devour his opponents, hold them, and be used as a setup for another attack. When using the Frog Summon, Megumi can use this as a way to transport any of his allies who are too injured to move, and even grab people from a distance, including himself. He would use this as a method to dodge oncoming attacks. These frogs are also a great defensive tool because they can use their tongues to stop any oncoming attacks. Next we have the Elephant Summon, and with this summon, Megumi can dish out an entire wave of water that will sweep away his opponents. If the water doesn't reach you, the elephant can try and attempt to chase you down itself by trampling you with its feet. Megumi can even get creative with this summon by summoning it in the air above an opponent, only to allow the elephant to crush them with its weight. When using his rabbit summon, Megumi will be able to run away from any imposing danger. The most practical use of this summon would be as a diversion. When nearly being trapped by a net, Megumi would use these same rabbits to take his own place in the trap itself, leaving him completely unscathed. And if you thought Megumi's creativity with this technique ended here, you're definitely wrong. He can even combine his shadows to create other beings entirely. By combining a frog shadow and a Nue shadow, he is able to create frogs with wings. And so much more. Another great perk of using this technique would be totality, which upon death of any Shinigami allows a Shinigami to share its experience and power with another Shinigami. Meaning a summon can take another summon's experience and power, combining their strengths to create an evolved version of a Shikigami we've seen before. With that being said, this wouldn't even be the end of Megumi's fighting abilities. He would be able to store weapons in his own shadows and use them on the fly, with him being very talented at using a sword and tonfa, making him a Shinigami user that can fight in close combat. He would even be able to fight with a stealthy approach by hiding in people's shadows. He would use these shadows as a blind spot and take the opportunity to knock out any unsuspecting victims. He can also disappear right out of thin air by hiding within the bodies of any shadow animals that he summons, and use this as an opportunity to attack you from beneath a shadow. Although Megumi's domain is incomplete, it is still a very viable option that he can use while fighting. With an incomplete domain, he can freely use all of his shadows at a single time and even travel across his own shadows to increase his mobility. He would essentially surf across all of his 10 shadow animals at a single time, with these animals being able to hold opponents down and attack in one single motion. If Megumi even takes damage in this form, he will just phase into a shadow as if he never got hurt in the first place. When using a more stable domain, he would be able to use his technique's potential at 120%. He would create clones of himself which would completely overwhelm anyone he's fighting, leading this domain to be considerably worse than a can't miss domain. Finally, we have Megumi's secret weapon, Maharaga. Maharaga would use the Sword of Extermination, which would use positive energy to destroy any and every cursed spirit that it would come into contact with. This summon would even be able to see cursed techniques and deflect them with its blade. With its power, it would knock Sukuna through multiple buildings with ease. The true ability of Maharaga that makes it so powerful is the fact that it can adapt to any and every phenomena that occurs. If you were to hit Maharaga with an attack, and if it were to survive, you would no longer be able to hit it with that same attack. Even with Maharaga being so dangerous and nearly impossible to kill on its own, what's really dangerous is the exorcism ritual as a whole. Megumi can do an exorcism ritual and force anyone to take part in it. By forcing anyone to take part in this ritual, if Megumi were to die, whoever he has in the ritual with him will die as well. And if that person dies, Megumi will also die. By taking advantage of this ritual, Megumi would even be able to take down Satoru at the cost of his own life. That's if anyone can beat Maharaga, that is. Number 4, Kinji Hikari. Hikari is extremely powerful in his own right. No matter how much strength Hikari puts in a single one of his punches, it will feel like you're getting cut by a blade whenever a punch makes contact due to the properties of his cursed energy. With a wave of his hands, Hikari can make subway train doors appear out of nowhere, using them to crush anyone he's fighting. Truth be told, the real kicker for Hikari would just so happen to be his domain expansion. When Hikari uses his domain expansion, all you can do is sit and watch what will happen, or kill him before his domain finishes playing out, which is definitely easier said than done. The chances of Hikari getting a jackpot is 1 out of 239, which means more than likely he won't hit the jackpot. That is, if we don't take into consideration that anything can happen. Realistically, it is a 50-50. It all boils down to whether or not Hikari will win or lose his gamble. Hikari's domain expansion is plot armor, and it's as simple as that. When winning the jackpot, Hikari becomes unkillable for 4 minutes and 11 seconds. This even allows him to have no restrictions whatsoever when it comes to using cursed energy, and also allows Hikari to have unlimited cursed energy. Even though Hikari never learned the reverse technique, his body would use this technique automatically, and this would prevent his body from breaking. If Hikari's arm got cut off, he would be able to just grow it right back. A specialty of this domain is the fact that it can be used over and over as long as the user is able to hit a jackpot. This means Hikari can spam this domain over and over again. Hikari won't just be immortal for 4 minutes and 11 seconds. Hypothetically, he will be unkillable as long as he keeps winning every single gamble he does. And if you think you can kill Hikari before he does his domain expansion, you are dead wrong. The use of his domain is faster than Maito's domain in Shibuya, meaning it is faster than 0.2 seconds. Hikari's domain boils down to whether or not Jeje feels like making him win. As I mentioned before, it's quite literally plot armor. Number 3, Ryomen Sukuna. At this point, Yuji would have consumed 15 fingers from Sukuna. While being Sukuna's vessel, he would have access to reverse curse techniques which would regenerate his body from any oncoming damage. Even while sharing a body with a human, Sukuna is unmatched. With a wave of his finger, he can cut through anything. By just standing, Sukuna can cut people up into 1,000,000 pieces. He would also be able to use fire as an ability by making fire arrows. These arrows would cause explosions to happen on contact. When using the dismantle technique, Sukuna would cut his opponents by waving his hands in their vicinity. However, this same attack can be deflected if you can some way, somehow actually end up seeing it. What really allows Sukuna to do some damage would be his domain. His domain rips and tears through anyone he goes against. His domain would use dismantle, and it would also use an attack known as cleave. Cleave would adjust to the toughness and cursed energy level of anyone inside of its 200-meter radius. It will slash through anyone and kill them with one hit due to his second ability, known as cleave. Dismantle would cut down anything that's an inanimate object, while cleave destroys anything with cursed energy within his range. This attack will cut down every single building, rock, or even speck of dust within a 200-meter radius alongside any signs of life itself. There is absolutely no chance of surviving this domain unless you're fast enough to get out of his 200-meter radius before he can even attack you. Number 2. Yuta Okkotsu. Yuta is far from a powerhouse, however what would truly make him stand out would be his amount of cursed energy and his talent. One of his most basic abilities would be channeling his cursed energy into his katana. In doing so, he can easily blow away his enemies with one swing. Yuta would compensate for his lack of firepower by backing any of his attacks with his own energy. He can even use the reversed curse technique, which will heal and regenerate his body from any damage that he has taken. He also has the ability to heal any of his allies who have been damaged as well. What really makes Yuta special is his ability to copy other curse techniques. Although there are no specifics, Yuta would be able to copy someone's ability by having Rika eat a part of their body. The amazing thing about this is that Yuta can literally have an answer for everything. He can have a curse technique that can solve any single one of his problems. He can easily use advanced techniques with no real difficulty at all, with cursed speech being a prime example because it's an advanced technique passed down from generation to generation. While knowing little to nothing about Jujutsu, he would be able to use and master this technique. When using Rika, Yuta is easily at his deadliest. Rika would be stated to be a spirit of endless cursed energy. Yuta would admit that he can run out of cursed energy himself. Yet others would think that his energy is bottomless. Yuta could possibly be running out of cursed energy because he has not reached his full potential yet. After all, he is stated to be able to rival Gojo Satoru eventually. Even so, when Yuta uses the complete manifestation of Rika, which is stated to have endless cursed energy, he is able to use the cursed techniques that he has copied. He is also able to use Rika's complete manifestation and a cursed energy supply that he stores within her. You could say the placements between Sukuna and Yuta are debatable. However, I'm leaning more towards Yuta because he can always have a cursed technique to solve any problem, and the possibility of having endless cursed energy leaves him to dominate a majority of people in a battle of domains. Number 1. Gojo Satoru. Did you really even have to think about this one? Gojo Satoru would be known as the strongest sorcerer in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, and this is not something to take lightly. The secret to Gojo's power would be his space manipulation. When using this space manipulation, he would have a giant field of space that prevents anything and everything from touching him, meaning he cannot be damaged because attacks will never ever reach him. And this space would be called the Infinity. No matter what, Gojo will never be hit because an attack will never ever reach him, because the space separating him and the attack would never let the attack get near him. And this field of space protects Gojo automatically. He doesn't even have to think in order to have this field of space protect him. If you thought he was unstoppable now, his techniques are a completely different story. With his ability Blue, Gojo can literally subtract space. In doing so, he would be using the power of attraction. This works because by simply subtracting the space in between two people, Gojo can inevitably cause them to attract to each other. This isn't all, he can also cause a giant field of attraction to a specific point, causing everything around it to surge into a magnetic field, which causes materials to be swallowed by a specific area of space, which is somewhat reminiscent to that of a black hole. You do not want to get caught up in that. Next, with Red, he has the power to repel. By adding space in between two different points, he can easily push people away from him, almost as if he's swatting them away like they're flies. And finally, he has Purple, otherwise known as Yeetus Deletus. By combining the negative of Blue and the positive of Red, he creates Zero, and in doing so, he can take away the space that exists, undoubtedly deleting it. Anything swept up in this attack is dead, no questions asked. And if he some way somehow gets tired of fighting, he can always use his I wanna win button, the domain expansion. This domain expansion would send infinite information into anyone's mind, making them unable to fight because Gojo sends too much information for their minds to handle. When you are in Gojo's domain, you literally cannot do anything. It gets worse. He loses almost no cursed energy when he uses a cursed technique, meaning he can spam attacks all day long. How do you beat him? You don't. You really just don't. He's the strongest character, no ifs, ands, or buts. It's ridiculous. You can't hit him. You can't do anything in his domain. He can push you away. He can pull you towards him. I don't know what you're doing. All you can do is lose. That's it. That's literally just it.